Well, good morning. My name is Andy. We're going to jump into this, but if you've come in the last 3 months or so, you're like, who the heck? They let anybody up on stage? Like, I was here before. It's okay. I kind of got grandfathered in. I can come back. So this is kind of the first weekend back from a sabbatical that I was on, that this house and this family and the team covering me kind of gifted to take after 7 years or 8 years of just doing a lot of stuff and, going through COVID and getting in this room and all the changes and family. It was a blessing to have a little bit of space. And lots of people ask how was sabbatical, and the short of it was like, it was beautiful and hard and restful and stressful all at once, which is normal life, like that's it. The point is to rest within normal life and not to hide over in a corner and kind of go out in the desert solitude. Though I did some of the solitude and I did get away. I get to spend some time with family and friends. I did also get to just be home and be with the kids and be with my family. So thank you so much. Y'all, I'm willing to answer any questions if you want to know more about how it went, but that's the basics type thing. So are we introduced? I'm Andy. Your people that were here or just got here in the last 3 months, and it's okay, I'm safe. I am the bald, smiley guy. So let me jump in. I know everybody just loves when someone comes back from a trip to see pictures from their trip. Like it's the greatest thing, right? Yeah. Like you're like, hey, let me show you. So you're scrolling through and people's eyes are glazing over and you're like, that's great. Especially with digital photos. It's like, that one doesn't mean anything. That one doesn't mean anything. That one doesn't, like there's so many of them. You're like, I don't care. But I do want to show you a couple experiences that I had with my brothers, and it's really tying in because they're kind of beautiful. We got to do a quick trip, like just a week, trying to get all the Utah national parks in 1 week type thing. And I don't see my brothers as much. It's that we lived in town and now we're spread out a little bit, and sometimes it's easy to neglect the closest relationships, right? And so when I went on sabbatical, I wanted to make sure that I took some time to just be with them, because they've been there with me the whole time, and they are amazing men. So we met up in Phoenix, we drove up to Utah, and we started our journey at Grand Canyon, and kind of, if you've ever done some of those, I've never done it. I was like, well, here we go. We're just gonna drive and look at views and hike trails and just, laugh a lot. And the first spot we were at was Grand Canyon, and you would think that was the greatest view of all the views that I would see on that journey. And it was spectacular, and it was kind of cool. But you could really just look across from one side of the canyon to the other, right? It's big and expansive, but there's so much more, but you just see the other side of the canyon. It's just right there. The last day, we're driving on this big mesa we didn't know we were on. It's kind of like slightly wooded, and we're just driving along a straight stretch, and we come right to the edge of it. And all of a sudden, this massive view pops up. And this is kind of what it looked like. It was like huge, and you could see 100 miles, like it felt like, in every direction. I had to turn and look each time, kind of just be like, what the heck? And there's these clouds flying across, and one side's Monument Valley, and the other side's all this. It was spectacular. I'm tearing up because I'm just like blown away at this random moment that we shouldn't have been on that road. We don't know how we ended up there. It just became beautiful. And these things are gonna tie in today as we talk about prayer and the Sermon on the Mount. But I had a different experience as well. So this is the most expansive, beautiful, just grand perspective. Everything's amazing. But we also decided to do some slot canyons. And if you know slot canyons, they're much smaller spaces. And we went to one, and this was the sign. It's cut off, but I can read. This is the sign that was in front of it. And it says, if you can fit between these two posts, you should do this canyon. And the posts are like this big, so I kind of just squeezed through, and all my bits touching everything, and I come through, and I'm like, I'm fine, I just made it through, and I'm looking at my brothers, but I'm inside nervous, because I'm like, well, I don't think it's just gonna be like a canyon that's like 6 inches, long. I think it'll be like a mile long. If it's like that the whole time, what am I gonna do? Should I have my smaller brother go first, so if he gets stuck, then I won't get stuck? but then I'm like, but if I go first and I can make it, then they can, kind of thing. So we went back and forth, but eventually it was kind of like, we've gone far enough. If I get stuck, I can't go back, I can't go forward. It's gonna look like this the whole way. Right? And I'm like freaking out inside more and more. And it just kept going. I kept feeling stuck and jammed between the rock and the hard place. And this picture, I'm on my tippy toes because my belly's holding me up. And I'm like kind of hanging, and there's another picture, and I'm just kicking I'm kicking my legs. Like, help me. And I'm kind of hyperventilating, and I didn't realize I was freaked out of tight spaces as much as when I found out. But as we shimmied through, we had one small little brief respite where it wasn't like this. After climbing up and climbing out, it was like a half mile of this. I was like, terrible. We came to one spot and the canyon opened up and the light shone down, and obviously it's like 6 feet wide now. And I could stand, shoulder to shoulder. And I was like, here's my breath. Okay, I know what's behind me, and it was really hard, and I'm freaking out. And I know that in front of me, I have more, but I have this little ray of, there's a world outside of this canyon. Because at a certain point, I started thinking, like, this is it. There's nothing else besides this hard thing and this hard thing. And I longed for that big view where it's like, perspective, everything, God's so good, it's amazing. So today, we're gonna be jumping into a section of scripture. And many of us have heard it, and it can be crocheted on grandma's quilt, or it's above your toilet or something. But it's the ask, seek, knock section of Sermon on the Mount, which is like Jesus' greatest hits. Like, we're like, Sermon on the Mount is all of them, but this one's like the one that gets spun, like spin this one again. Kids these days, they don't listen to 20 songs. It's one over and over and over and over and over on Spotify. And it's like, start it again. This would be sometimes for many of us, the start it again in our heads. And it's a part of a teaching, and Jesus will say a lot more grand things about prayer, as he already has, as the pray in my name and the Lord's Prayer. And when you gather together, anything you ask in the Lord's name, I will give you. This is kind of in the realm of a lot of these grand things that he says about prayer. But as we're gonna jump in and read it, Jesus isn't simply offering instructions. He's unveiling a way of life that shapes us into kingdom people. That's his whole point. It's not that he tells us exactly what to do, because some of these things are really like, I don't get what's the next step. Just don't do it, but that doesn't seem to make sense. Even the section that Drew taught a couple weeks ago, don't judge, and you're like, well, there's a lot of parts to it. Well, yeah, because he's wanting to build in us people that we become resilient and intuitive, following him and being formed into those resilient kingdom people. So this is a passage that Jesus encourages us to connect with the Father as he does. So let's do it, okay? Got your Bible, all right? Some of you are like, don't ask me. I got the Bible out, here you got, bring it out. Let's follow along if you can. And we're gonna start where Drew was at a couple weeks at Easter, and we're gonna tie them together, because as you know, there's no headings in the original transcript. There might be some little punctuation things that we're translating, but there weren't the headings that says, now he says, ask, seek, knock. Now he says this, now he says this. It's all tied together in a flow as the gospel writer, Matthew, kind of felt like the Holy Spirit was leading him. So let's jump in. We're ready to go. And we'll start with verse 7, I believe. Verse 1. We're gonna go to 12. Do not judge, or you too will be judged, as we heard Drew read a few weeks ago. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of my eye, or out of your eye, when all you can see is a speck in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. It flows. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do. This psalm sums up the law and the prophets. The reason I read that all kind of contextually is that at the beginning, I started reading at the beginning of this chapter, which wasn't in the Bible either, do not judge, the beginning of this section, and it finishes with do unto others. So there's a clear context, though we could take this out and meditate upon it. You can take over too, by the way, just like the video. Yeah. There's a clear context about relational dynamics, hard relational dynamics, difficult relational dynamics, and it finishes with this this will just fix everything. Do unto others as they do unto you, and it kind of bookends this teaching. And in the middle is the ask, seek, knock. So just like a lot of the Bible, there are times when we can pull out sections and just meditate on that section, and you will find some amazing, powerful truths as long as we're not twisting it too much. We can just soak on that, but also knowing that it's part of a run of pacing, talking about here's how you confront relational dynamics. Who should you judge? Who should you not judge? When should you talk? When should you not talk? Should you deal with yourself, or should you throw wisdom out and not have boundaries and just throw with everything? All these relational dynamics, he's throwing them out there, and then he says, ask right after that. So there is something to be said that those things are tied together, and I just wanted to make sure that was at least a piece of our journey. But I think the overarching kind of view is that Jesus wants us to connect with the Father the way he does. Some passages you hear Jesus talking about him as God, in flesh, and we understand that. Other passages he'll talk about the Father, he's the divine Son in flesh talking about the Father, and there's this understanding of relational connection. And that freaked out more people than anything else when he started talking about the Father, God, Yahweh, as his Father. That freaked everybody out. But this is one of those sections where he's not just saying, I'm God, but he's talking about this mysterious connection between a father and a son. And he'll use a lot of those same parenting parallels throughout this teaching. So if there's anything to be gained from the sermon today, I want to kind of focus and remember some of the words that Jesus said as he was going to the cross, as he was about to be arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, that sound a lot like this. But he's actually practicing the asking, the knocking, the seeking, the knocking. And he says this, in the same way, I want you to connect with the Father the way I do. My prayer is not for them alone, in John 17:20. I pray for those who will believe in me through their message, his disciples and us down the line, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be one, so that the world may believe that you sent us. And as I was reading this, as I was studying this, that's one of the biggest themes, is he wants us to understand this good Father, the one that gives good gifts, that's different and parallel to some of our parents for sure, but is so much further beyond. And Jesus interacted with him his entire life on this planet as a incarnated man, divine nature, all together. This is how he interacted with the Father. So as you probably have heard, as maybe you've been in church for a long time, this is like a preacher's dream. Like you got ask, seek, knock, and you're like 3 things. Yeah, 3 points. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. And then I was like, but I'm no hero, so I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm no hero, but they kind of stuck out to me. I'm not gonna verbatim, but it felt like there's 3 movements. If we just focus in, as we had the context, relational dynamic, understanding the Father like Jesus relates to the Father, pray like this, as he said in Our Father in heaven previously. It's all kind of that tied together. There's kind of felt like there's 3 movements through this. And one was dependence on his goodness, and a persistence, a continual seeking out for his justice, and a vulnerability in our questions. And all of it kind of leading us on this trajectory to trust him, to have faith and belief built in us, and resilience, that we would be able to, as the early church would, confront everything that came down the line and never give up. But I think one of the biggest things that this will always attack when we're talking about prayer is that old lie from the garden, when the deceiver's looking, talking, kind of convincing, whispering, did he really say? And insinuating he's holding out on you. And when I think about prayer, and when I think about this section, the ask, the seek, the knock, or I'm thinking about a father giving good gifts, all those kind of questions kind of spin out in my head. And I realize they're all sourced in the same question. Did he really say? Listening to the enemy. Did he really mean that? Is he as good as he says he is? All those questions, and we're gonna talk a lot about questions today. But let's start with that asking moment. The first word in the string of movements is just ask. It's simple, right? So then the next question, if my kids were listening, they'd say, well, what should we ask for? Maybe that's your question. Doesn't God know what I need? He just said it a little bit before, the sparrow and the lilies, and don't worry about anything. The Lord knows what you need. So what are you asking for? Can I ask for anything? Is this a blank check? Spin it out there. What if I ask for the wrong thing? Some of you guys worry people. I don't know if there's any worry people in the world. What if I ask for the wrong thing? What if there's some failure in me that he won't answer because, I have something wrong with me? He had just finished talking about these relational dynamics, to not judge, to work through. And he seems to give an answer to ask. And if you know anything about James is like my favorite book of the Bible. It's a little bit later in the New Testament, but it was one of the earliest books that was kind of formed and written. Even before these gospel accounts, much of James was kind of already ironed out. And James was the brother of Jesus, earthly brother here, and he became the leader of the church in Jerusalem in a lot of ways. He was kind of the patriarch, and he wrote this amazing book all about these practical things. And so much of it is like verbatim from the things that Jesus, which obviously, because he was there, you're listening to Jesus, he's hearing his teachings, but they're kind of verbatim. And there's a little section, and I thought about the tying together of the asking and what should we ask for. And James starts out his teaching, if anybody lacks wisdom, ask for it. He's repeating that story. The idea of that I don't know what to do in this relational dynamic, I don't know what to do with this question, I don't know. He's pointing it back to that ask for wisdom. So in a lot of ways, you could read this. One simple direct reading is just to begin to ask for wisdom. If you're wondering what to ask for, Solomon asked for wisdom and discernment, and a lot of things, great things kind of happen, but that's the journey. I just need to know. And for most of us, I think that'd be a great starting place, but that's the asking. It's kind of straightforward, but there's so much more, because he jumps in, continues, and he goes on to describe a father giving bread, and not the stone, or a mother, your parents, giving fish and not the snake to the child who was asking for help. Then pointing to these examples, how much more does my Father, our Father in heaven, delight in giving good gifts? So sure, he's talking about just a simple thing, but he's trying to reflect a connection, a relational conversation that would happen with the asking. I happen to be a dad, and so this example kind of hits for me because I love to give my kiddos stuff if they were to ask it with me. We actually have a younger child we're fostering right now, and she's learning language skills and learning to speak and learning to ask for things. And if she asks me for anything and like use her voice, she does sign language, but as she's doing that, or she's trying to vocalize or pointing or dragging me, I'm like, it's just a joy to give her that. Like, that's like way off the list, right? I mean, like, that's whatever, if you asked, I'm there. I don't think I would be, and I think that's what Jesus is saying, I wouldn't be like swap her for a snake when she saw the licorice on the counter. Like, she loves licorice, and candy, and I'd be like, oh, you asked for this, I'm gonna swap something out. Like, we wouldn't do that. Good father wouldn't do that. I also have teenagers, as some of you guys know, and there's the other side of things. They will ask me, can I have a 24-pack of Monster, energy drinks before I, start my week of school or something? I'm like, you don't need that, like that would be terrible for you. And I, as a good father, am not gonna just give you something that's like just terrible. I wanna give you good gifts. I'm not just a wide open, bank, and I'm just like, throw this out there. So how much more will the Father desire to give me the things I need and desire with the wisdom to not give me the things that harm me or do it out of spite? That's the other side of this. Some of us may feel that we are in kind of the Shakespeare story, where we're just play acting and playing out parts in this grand scheme of God's sovereignty, which there is some truth in parts of that. And he's just like, well, I'm gonna throw this over here to spite him. I'm gonna show this to prove him. I'm gonna do this thing. And maybe he does some things, but this is not what Jesus is talking about. This kind of spiteful father, or the one that was like, well, it's what you asked for, so you better eat it. Like, it's gonna ruin everything, but you wanted this relationship. So, sometimes like we have this interaction, or we think of Jesus or God the Father as like the great chess player that's like moving, well, you did this and I'll move this and it'll be amazing. And those are the two like far schemes of understanding his sovereignty when asking for things. And it can get a little bit, but the Bible's like not really over here, and it's not really hard over here. It's kind of right in the middle, coming through a relational connection that Jesus always points back to in his teaching with a good father. So there's repeated in Mark 9:19, I wanted to highlight this. He says, you unbelieving generation. He's kind of calling out because there's this healing coming. Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me, I'm gonna heal him. So they brought him, and the spirit of Jesus, immediately, the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around and foamed and all this stuff. And Jesus asked the boy, the father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, the father asked. So the father wants something good for his kid. He's like, I want healing for him. He has often been thrown into the fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And Jesus, now he's in that fullness of God, that like full thing, says, if you can, ? Everything is possible for the one who believes. These stories are gonna circle around in people's heads as they hear of Jesus, and they hear this teaching, and we'll have reread the Sermon on the Mount for all these generations, and they all tie together. All of his words tie together. The asking, the believing, the humility to ask, the humility to have these trusting moments. It's kind of like that big picture I had on the screen. I'm just out here, Lord, and we're just seeing this beautiful thing, and you can do anything, anything's possible with you. So what I believe, this little highlight here, and we have two other parts I want to get to, but and sharing a little bit of our story. He's inviting us to ask with humility, like as kids, not knowing the whole story. He's inviting us to ask with clarity, like clearly. And maybe that's just for wisdom, maybe that's for healing. He's asking us to ask with belief. Just like that father asking Jesus, you can do anything, can you help us? Everything is possible for the one who believes. And we can take that section and be like, okay, he just said ask, we're done. Okay, cool, ask, he's just gonna do it. Because everyone that asks receives. But he has this other part, everyone who seeks will find. And the seeking phrase, in fact, all of these three phrases, I didn't know this, I looked it up, it's like Greek guys that are like above my pay grade. This language here isn't simply saying ask once, seek once, knock once. It's more, and some of our Bibles even say this, it's more keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking. There's a persistence there. There's a persistence pushing. It doesn't point to the one-time prayers. Those don't form us into much. Though we have to do it. Like we're just here, I'm praying this thing one time. But this prayer life that Jesus is talking about, this whole Sermon on the Mount is to turn you into a person, a kingdom person that would follow him and bring his purposes here on earth, everywhere you go. He wants to create a resilient group of people, disciples, mothers, fathers, sons and daughters. So one time, just do it once is all good. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about persistence. One of the highlights of persistence, if we jump back to some of Jesus' parables, a parallel story, is in Luke 18, 1-8. Many of you will know this one. It's about the persistent widow. Then Jesus told the disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. Like Luke jumps ahead, like spoiler alert, this is to make sure that you know to keep praying and never give up. How many times do the parallels like make sense, or the parables? Does he make sense with them and explain it at the beginning? Almost none. But this one, for some reason, Luke's like, I just want you to know, the point of this parable is that you pray and never give up. And he goes on to tell the story. In a certain town, there was a judge who never feared God nor cared what people thought. So he's kind of parallel to the earthly father in a lot of ways from the ask, seek, knock section. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea, grant me justice against my adversary. For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, we'll see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me. He's like, she's gone full Karen, she's coming at me over and over. She's persistent, she is in, like she's not letting go. And the Lord says, listen to what the unjust says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones? It's much like that, like how much more would you're an evil parent and you want to give good gifts, how much more would this good father want to give the gifts? This is the same kind of phrasing. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Rhetorical questions. Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. So this persistence journey, as Luke just said, is to encourage us to pray and never give up. Now, trust me, I'm not just scuffing all of those. I have a story. I want to really dive into maybe a little bit more personal how this plays out for some of us that are just grinding through really painful places. It's sometimes these scriptures can be a little bit like, yeah, of course, I'm in the midst of it. I'm trying not to give up, but this is like taking my breath every time I think about it. It's so painful and hurtful. This persistence is not in spite of your circumstances, it is through it. It's the formational journey of prayer. And Luke's not comparing the unjust judge to God. He's comparing us, like the other people. God is not the unjust judge. He's more like the good father is how much more. He's like enlarging us. The persistence is supposed to enlarge our hearts. It's supposed to enlarge us in our minds to see and experience things that we're not seeing within our external experience, to see them and experience them from his perspective. So it's an enlarging of our hearts. And this quote is so beautiful. It's from Mother Teresa, and it reminded me of this, was prayer enlarges the heart until it's capable of containing God's gift of himself. Ask and seek, and your heart will grow big enough to receive him and keep him as your own. That's the invitation of the persistence, is like over and over and over again, not letting my life and my mind and my thoughts towards God or with God shrink and shrivel so much that there's nothing left of my heart for me to really connect with him. I've just let it all kind of pray and never give up. Let persistence push you towards the justice that you are praying for. So let's land on the last one, and this will kind of pull all these together. Again, it's not a 1, 2, 3. These are not formulas. This is not a transactional love from Jesus. This is not a do this and it'll work out. Don't do this, it won't work out. This is a relationship. This is a connection. This is questions bouncing back and forth, but this is vulnerability. That knocking phrase. I remember waiting at the door of Andrea's house when we were first starting to date. And she had worked really hard and bought this townhouse. It was back when the houses were like $5,000 or something, like she had an interest rate of -0 or something, It's like, how did she have a house when she's 25? She's amazing that way. But I didn't. I just like living at my parents or something. I was a scrub. And, but I would go to her house, right? And I remember those early days, the early ones, knocking at her door and waiting, kind of rehearsing what I'd say when she comes. But when you knock at a door and you're waiting in that spot and you want to actually go in, I did want to go inside the house, trust me. You're at the whim of that person. So I'm in this waiting moment, knocking, and I'm at the whim of this human being coming to the door and opening it for me. I'm sure hoping it's gonna happen, but it's super vulnerable. You're just hanging out on the porch, and that was part of my early stories with her. I would come and I'd hang out on her porch and knock on her door. And eventually she opened it. It's good, right? It took a long time for her to open that door. But once she did, there was relief in my heart. I felt settled, and we'd go sit on the couch and talk, or we'd have a dinner. I came to the table of her life. She opened up the door and I came into the table of her life. It was beautiful. It was the start of our journey. That's how we grew together to become married and the two becoming one in that wild thing. Following Jesus' words puts our lives in vulnerable places. You can't get around it. If you didn't want to sign up for vulnerability, or you didn't know that was the story with Jesus, I'm just telling you, vulnerability is the only place where you can learn trust. Any relationship that doesn't have vulnerability has no trust, has no belief. There's really no faith in us if we can't have a place of vulnerability. We have to have the questions. We have to be at the door waiting sometimes, knocking. It's a place where it's easy to begin when you're waiting in that front spot. And if you're thinking about circumstances of your life, it's that place where you're like, did she really say she was gonna open the door and talk to me? Like she told me to come over. I'm parroting that snake in the garden. Did he really say? That question keeps circling around. If you can't, oftentimes, if I don't come to that vulnerable place, or my faith's not in a vulnerable position, I don't have an opportunity to grow and confront that question. And it can just stay inside me and circle around until I'm saying stuff like, Jesus, you're holding me out on me. God, you're holding out on me. I'm circling around, oh, did he really say? And that's a lot of times kind of what pushes me to take things into my own hands, much like our ancestors way in the back. It's interesting that he uses that snake imagery in this section. Asking for a fish, give us your bread, stone, fish, snake. There's like that same snake imagery. I don't know, maybe they're tied together in there. But for me, continuing Andrea and I's story, later in our marriage, Andrea and I began to make plans for starting a family. And we set out and we prayed and we hoped. We were like the ones on that big overlooking vista, like anything is possible with you, God. Like the world is an oyster, it's out there, everything's beautiful. We felt that God had put these huge dreams in our hearts, our longings for a large, vibrant family. Our belief was sky high and anything was possible for him. Even after months turned to years, still no pregnancy. We continued to pray and we received prayer from others, and their phrases were laced with deep faith and hope. Much like we're all on that viewpoint. Here's what you could do, God, and we have belief. One by one, the young couples around us began having their own kids, and family members began celebrating over announcements, and we hear about the stories of names, and somewhere along the line, sorrow began to wear down our resolve. And in that sneaky spot, self-pity and anger wanted to take its place. Wanted to say, did he really say? Did he really say? Maybe he's holding out on us. What did we do? Then we had a miscarriage and it all came crashing down. It got very real and we knew something wasn't right. So the doctor's visits and tests went through those. Nothing's conclusive. Nothing can be pointed to as the problem. I mean, it'd be nice if you had an answer to the problem. It's kind of like, if God just said no, it'd be really easy. Or if he just said yes, but I'm in the silent spot, I'm in the middle. Like, I don't know. We don't know. That's the vulnerable place. We were in a vulnerable place. Both of our faith on Jesus was on the line. We grew up with both of us in church, so we had those words in our head. Anything is possible for you, God. But new questions began to arise. Are we cursed? Maybe you've had these in your own head. Am I cursed? Or is God oblivious to my need, to my healing, to our barrenness? He's like an uninterested doctor who has the cure but's out on the golf course instead, just kind of checked out. Or is he withholding love because of my own failures, looking at my life, reflecting on the brokenness of my family and different things? Maybe that's the problem. Or, like many of us, when we're at this vulnerable place, which is not the end, maybe this was all a lie. Maybe he's not even real and he's not even there. That we can have a gamut of those. And that's what I love about being here, and I miss so much while I was on my sabbatical, was because coming into a room here, you become vulnerable at some point. If you stay long enough, we don't really hang out in the empty spaces and just do our own thing. We want to be together and vulnerable. You may learn a story of someone who's gone through something terrible. You may be learning about a story of someone who's going through a really amazing experience and has amazing blessings happening, or over here going through something super hard, but you're in the room with those people and there's something that just like lifts you up through that story, but you know that people are asking those same questions. They're thinking about God's sovereignty and his choice and my will and some of those things, or they're just thinking about how do I make it to the next day? Or like, how did we get this blessing? We had no idea. We didn't do anything. We don't even deserve it. If you're honest and we're honest, these are the kinds of questions that will pop up when we think of ask. We think of seek. We think of knock. On one hand, it sounds pretty straightforward. On the other hand, it's not predictable whatsoever. There's not a formula. So I would love to release you in this as you're reading this teaching on your own and listening to the Holy Spirit. Hopefully that's your chance going into this week, or you've just enjoyed Sermon on the Mount and you're going back through it, that you begin to be released from that transactional formula type prayer steps, that you just be free from that. That's not what Jesus is inviting. It's not what he's talking about. It's not a one-time slot machine. Yeah, what's going to happen? We were hoping. I mean, like, we're like slot machine, but we kept going. For Andrea and I, we chose to speak of those disappointments and those questions to God. It's like we were sitting at the table, surrounded by our rough circumstances. Or it's like we were jammed in that slot canyon, knowing what was behind us, a lot of pain and waiting, and knowing what was in front of us, no answers, but kind of stuck in that little spot. And maybe briefly for a second, God, you could just open up a little spot here and I could just be vulnerable and share my question, and maybe you would show up in that. That's the knocking. Maybe you could just open up this little spot. Maybe it's the most painful place, and just let me into the table, and I can sit there with you, and we can talk, and we can share our worries, and we can share our discouragements, and we can share our joys, we can share our blessings, we can share our hopes, but I want to be at the table with you in that, in the midst of whatever's going on. So for us, as we spoke those disappointments, we prayed those questions, an opportunity arose for us to welcome in 2 foster kids into our home in the midst of that. We still had disappointment, but it felt like we were beginning a journey of renewed trust. Our timetable and our story of our family had seemed like it had shattered. But we met Jesus, the man of sorrows, in that place. He's the one who hears all our prayers, and the Bible says captures all our tears, as many teachers highlight, but he became real for us. He carried those with us, and he was the one spoken of in Isaiah. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, and he was familiar with suffering. He was familiar with suffering. He knew my suffering and Andrea's suffering. This was the Jesus who prayed in the garden before he was taken to the cross. A lot of the same prayers, Lord, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. This is the one who would lead us day after day and month after month, persistent, faithful, loving, in communion with the good Father, giving us those good gifts. And we would begin to see the good gifts rise up around us that we didn't even expect. As we would receive into our home one beautiful child after the next. Some staying for a brief moment of their story, and others getting to stay with us for the rest of our story. Our family became a family that would not quit. That was more than what was expected or beyond what was hoped for. I became a father to the fatherless, and Andrea nurturing steady motherly presence to ones that needed a mom. It didn't turn out perfectly or easy. And looking back across those last 20 years of our lives, we needed the resilience of this prayer movement, the asking, the seeking, the not giving up, the vulnerable place. I needed that vulnerability, that resilience is born in me. And slowly for us in our story, which I believe is the ultimate story for every single person here, wherever you're at, I want you to hear, don't give up. I don't want you to feel like you have to throw away your questions when you hear, don't give up. He's asking for your questions. He's asking for your disappointments. He's inviting you to seek him persistently for the justice that I want this healing. I want to receive this family, this journey that I'm on. I need wisdom for. Whatever it is that you're seeking, you're asking, you're knocking for. For us, the tight canyon of pain opened up into that wide open space of awe. And I can look back and see the journey, seeing that it's not perfect, but it was his grace that made us resilient through it. The asking, the seeking, and the knocking puts us in dependence on the Father. His sovereignty, yes, and his goodness, all wrapped in one mysterious thing that we cannot really know unless we ask questions with him. Persistently choosing to bring our questions and disappointments to him, placing us in a trusting, vulnerable place with God where we can be comforted and healed and restored and purposed for his glory on display. That's the point. The sum of this teaching is the type of prayer life that is not a transaction or a formula. It's something that forms us over time and pulls us to this doorstep of a resilient faith. That no pain, no sorrow, no circumstance, nothing in heaven, nothing in hell, no angels, no principalities, nothing, not even death, can dismantle in us. And I know some of you even have experienced the death of loved ones in these last weeks. Death doesn't have the final say either. That's what Jesus has opened up for us. So I'm going to land this because I'm sure we got stuff to do today and we got to go over our moms or whatever we might do, or just take a Sabbath afternoon and rest. Last year we read this book by Tyler Staton, and it was the Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools. And in one of the chapters, which has a ton of these themes in it as well, like he did a whole section on this, which was really great source material. Like, I'm like, this is good stuff. I'm like, that's my life. Oh, he's telling my story. So I'm like, yeah. He had these 3 things at the end were really amazing practical directions. And I wanted to invite us, maybe you'll just take a picture of them, or Christian will post the notes or something. But these were 3 practical things that you could do, 3 movements within your prayer life that you could practice and pull in to continue the formational journey that you're already on. Everyone's being formed by something, as we always say here, but we want to be formed by Christ. So there's things that we can do. And the first, he had 3 points, and I thought these were really good. Say it like you mean it. Don't begin with grit or faith, like some of us want to do. Start with disappointment, naming your pain and your need. He says this, he collects our tears, and we begin by doing the same, dragging up our painful experience of the perceived absence, silence, or rejection, and telling God our disappointment. That's relational. That's a connection to the Father. That's thinking about the good Father. Listen for the question. Invite God to show you the question beneath your disappointments. And worship team, would you guys come forward? Invite God to show you the question beneath your disappointments. You know you're at the root when you get a deeper question, right? First question is like, am I cursed? But then later I start asking the questions like, did you really say? You start getting like, are you holding out? Like the deeper questions, like, is this the kind of like life that I'm going to be living? Beneath the circumstance left in the wake of your disappointment lives a question about the character of God. Is he really loving? Is he the one listening? Is he turning everything towards redemption? That question hooked to God's person and his character, that's the one that we would listen for in that space. And a last practical step, ask God to meet you in the question. That was a choice that Andrea and I made together, was just to keep asking and letting him meet us in the questions of our disappointment. Hold your deep question before God, inviting him to bring you healing. He heals through process of pointed questions, through process. So this question you've discovered holds within it the power of healing. Invite him and keep inviting. We have a few moments and we have communion in the back that we always have available. And the worship team is going to lead a song. It's simple, God, I look to you. I mean, it's classic words. Hopefully some of those words give you a voice to something that's in your heart right now. If you want to take communion with family or friends, just to remember, that's what it's all. Remember me in this. Remember Jesus is redemption. Remember Jesus is healing. Remember Jesus is resurrecting every circumstance that I'm in. Remember Jesus is leading us with this good Father to amazing places. And you may be experiencing those right now. So get over there and thank him. Or maybe you're stuck with the questions. And we're gonna take a few moments. You're not gonna answer them all. This isn't really even the venue to like sit and ask the questions of God, but maybe that might start right here as we're singing, as we're taking a few moments. Let me pray over us, and I appreciate you guys hearing some of our story. Jesus, we thank you, you are in our midst. You've been part of the creating of life in us since the beginning. The word that is God, that's you, Jesus. You became flesh to understand our suffering and to show us a life beyond our wildest hopes and our dreams, through every tough circumstance, through every pain, where no death, nothing can rob it, nothing can steal it. So we offer again ourselves to you as a community. We are your image bearers. We are your kids. And we worship humbly. We ask with clarity. We lay our questions before you. Lead us away from formulas and transactional love moments. We know you want to meet us here and every single day. We love you, Lord.